Hey everyone, how's it going? I am iamxeracon and I am back once again. Was it good returns for the month of September, and when I asked which book you wanted me to review for this month, The Hunger Games won in a landslide, much to my surprise actually. Now, for this video, I am only reviewing the first book. There will be no comparisons to the film adaptation or consideration of events in the later books, and I will not be comparing it to Battle Royale. But without further ado, let's get started. So my initial thoughts when I started reading the book was the choice to use first-person narration. It's a curious yet bold decision to go down that path. It's even bolder to use the present tense for the narration instead of past tense like numerous first-person stories do. And I think that this was a good choice for Suzanne Collins. It allows the reader and Katniss to have limited knowledge in order to create tension. I think that this is executed pretty well. However, there are a few spots where the perspective loses itself. For example, when Katniss is sedated, she says that it's a needle that does it. However, she was stabbed from behind. She wouldn't know if it was a needle. The better wording would be to say that she felt a prick on her neck. The audience would be able to deduce what happened. Let's talk about the story now. Oh my goodness. Part 1 of the book would have to be one of the most grueling moments in the Was It Good series. Remember how much I disdained the Transformers film? Well, at least that was a 2-hour experience. Part of the reason I didn't finish this book until yesterday was because it felt like such a trudge. But let's unpack the reason for that. Chapter 1 felt too much like an info dump, and there was a bit too much description and detail at times. This is something I'll address later on. In Chapter 2, Katniss mentioned starvation being common, especially with large families. This made me ask, how the heck did the families have that many kids? I know that some people in real life, they might have large families and maybe even, during some rough conditions, but they aren't living in a dystopia. I would think that the characters would know better and execute some sort of prudence. I mean, that this, you don't have the means to afford to feed this family, so why do you keep popping out kids? And with these large families, I'm guessing that she means having 5 kids, not 2 or 3 kids. Around chapter 4 is where I really begin to feel burnt out. Now, it could be because of having to read so many texts for my classes, and I admit, that reading a book for Was It Good during my fall semester, it was probably not within my best interest. It's probably one of the worst decisions I've done. But the other reason is, again, there's so much detail and explanation that it's killing my interest in the story. Katniss goes on her own little speeches about orange juice and coffee, and while it may seem special because, she doesn't have the luxury to experience these things, I have to ask, so what? Does this have anything to contribute to the story whatsoever? I have already seen how miserable her life is. I understand that she is poor. It feels like I'm getting the point beaten into my head. And again, I don't have a problem with, having things, thinking about oh, this is something that goes back to my family, this is something that we can't do. But I feel like it just happens so much that it's really a nuisance to me. A brief nitpick I had was a moment of telling instead of showing. Again, tying back to my breaking of perspective. This occurs with Katniss and Cinna when he says, "You're not afraid of me, are you, Katniss?" He sees my expression and grins. That was a moment of telling. What it could have said is, "I feel my facial muscles tense," and he grins. It's showing that, again, this is the first person perspective. She doesn't see her expression. You don't see what you're doing, you feel it. For example, I could be smiling right now. Again, from a first person present perspective, you would say, I feel like my, well, you get what I'm saying. The point is the fact that you're showing it instead of telling it. But I digress. There is an actual moment here in this chapter, though, where I genuinely chuckled, though. It was when Katniss thought that Cinna was a madman. I don't know why. I don't know what it was exactly about that statement that humored me, but I thought it was pretty funny. Another moment I had where I was puzzled with its inclusion was with the Avox girl. On one hand, it introduces the Avox that allows the world building to continue, having that this is another set element. That's a good thing. But on the other hand, she is quickly dismissed as quickly as she is introduced. She makes another appearance later on when Katniss has a meltdown and is in Katniss's room and stuff. And Katniss does think about her a few times in the book, just because of like specific moments where the girl was captured and stuff like that. But I didn't find her inclusion to be necessary at all. And I think that making the Avox someone Katniss knew felt a bit forced because the reader doesn't know her. Her condition is sad, because she's a servant and she's had her tongue cut out, but the audience can't really sympathize with her because, we just meet her. Katniss is like completely taken aback and is completely surprised, and it's like, oh my goodness, you're alive. You're an Avox though, but the reader were like, okay, who is she? If she was referred to earlier in the book, we might be able to feel more sympathy for her. But we we can't really feel sympathy for her. In a later chapter, when Katniss shoots an arrow at the game makers, I couldn't help but do a mental facepalm. In a setting where the characters are constantly monitored, have energy fields to prevent the tributes from jumping off a roof, and genetically mutated creatures, having a contingency for the game makers to not be harmed by a tribute was overlooked. Like, there wasn't even a peacekeeper in the room to neutralize Katniss for her action. Like, that was so absurd to me that, such a thing occurred or would be allowed to happen. When part 2 arrived with the games, I was so relieved. This is when I actually started to enjoy the book. Nothing like having teens slaughter each other to lift your spirits, eh? But seriously though, the action and suspense, it did feel like a breath of fresh air. There were no irrelevant tangents. I mean, there might have been a couple, but it wasn't distracting like the earlier books when like we were so just into like the world building, and it's like we go on another tangent or so like that. It was just concentration on the present. Sadly, though, even though the majority of the book is the games, I didn't really have too many notes that I wrote about it. I mean, the design of the arena was nice. The moments of battle were nice. The moments of wilderness survival were also nice. But there's not really too much I could say about that. Sometime after Katniss finds Peeta, there's a statement made about Haymitch being right about Katniss not being likable. And I thought about it. He's right. I don't like Katniss. I don't necessarily dislike her, but she isn't someone I'm fond of. So let me stop for a moment and make a quick comparison. I've been reading Jane Eyre for one of my courses. Good book, by the way. And Jane is much more likable than Katniss. She's definitely imperfect like Katniss. I mean, she does have a bit of a temper. She says things that I know will get her in worse trouble. However, I still like her. She's abused by her family. She goes off to a boarding school where she isn't in the best of conditions, especially after being falsely accused, and she leaves to work under the employ of an eccentric but harsh man. I am still rooting for Jane the entire time, though. I want her to succeed. I want her to come up on top. When she is close to having her happiness fulfilled, she loses it, and I feel sorry for Jane. I can't say that I feel the same way about Katniss. I don't really feel any emotions for her. On the subject of characters, the only ones I really liked were Gale, Cinna, and Rue, with Peeta being likable because he's pitiable. Gale, while having ideas that might be extraordinary for what they can do as far as what they're allowed to do, he is a sensible person. I also think that his nature and kindness also allowed me to like him as a character. Cinna is a pretty good confidant, although he might be overly nice. But I think it's his being a confidant that allows me to, actually like him as a character, especially considering the fact that when Katniss comes to the capital, he's the only person from, that world that is nice to her and treats her like a person. For some reason, even though she is similar to Prim, I like Rue more. Now, it could be because she isn't a needy little sister, although don't get me wrong, Prim is stated to not show aversion to blood and wounds, but she does feel like a better character. Now, a possible reason could be that I guess that I spend more time with her in the book than Prim. I don't know. With Peta, his naive nature is what causes me to pity him. He goes through the entire book with feelings for Katniss and gets friend zoned in the end after believing that she does love him. Now, don't get me wrong. I completely understand Katniss not having feelings for him. I mean, she's only now getting to know him. She doesn't trust him or even like him early on. She thinks about Gale. I mean, even in the games, she thinks that he's out to get her. So all this is understandable. But I can't help, but feel sorry for the guy, especially, since he loses his leg after the game is over. The remark that Peeta makes about Katniss hurrying up to kill him when they're in the cave was funny. I had another chuckle there. Part 3 of the story is aftermath filled with pomp. I could feel the tension of Katniss's decision having effect, especially since, everyone is like not certain about what's going to happen next. People are like, everyone's eyes are on Katniss because, they're like, oh, she did this horrible thing, she mocked us and stuff like that. So I could feel the tension there. Not much else to say, though, besides the joy I had when finishing the book. So this was a bit of a disappointment, but I wasn't too surprised. I remember enjoying the book when I was a teen, and I enjoyed seeing the movies. I read the books, I went saw the movies. I saw the double feature when Catching Fire came out, and I saw, Mockingjay 1 and 2. However, I think that I can't fully appreciate it now because I'm no longer the targeted demographic. Though I still think that there are narrative choices that could have, been made that would allow me to be more engaged with the story. The game portion of the book was by far my favorite. So, was it good? Kinda, but you've got to get through the sludge first. There is a good time to be had here in the story, but the price for admittance is reading through some dull chapters first. The characters might not be the best part, but you can at least remember them. I wouldn't recommend this book, but you could do worse. That being said, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it. I have no idea what the next month's Was It Good video will be. Maybe I'll do another poll. I don't know. We'll see. No books, though, this time. I can't bear to go through that again. But that will do it for today. So until next time, everyone, I am iamxeracon signing off. Have a good one.